Hi, I'm Kendra Farazal, and I'm here with Jenna Keller. And Jenna is a registered psychotherapist and a nationally certified counselor. Jenna is also a yoga instructor and a trained clinical hypnotherapist. So you really bring a lot to your counseling practice, which I think is so awesome. And I'm curious to know, because it seems like what you bring to your practice is a little more mindfulness based than a more traditional psychotherapy session,
right.
Although you include traditional psychotherapy, which I think is really cool. How do you think that might be different than just a typical traditional psychotherapy session?
Yeah, so a lot of times with traditional psychotherapy, a foundational piece is cognitive behavioral therapy, which is all about the thoughts, watching the thoughts, becoming aware of self-talk, and especially negative self-talk, and replacing that negative thought with a positive thought. So I think that's a really important piece, and that's a part of what I do, especially with the clinical hypnotherapy training. It's all about changing that core self-talk that's at the subconscious level a lot of times.
Wow.
And then adding in the somatic piece, which means like the body-based piece, is a whole nother level. So you're able to access feelings that sometimes aren't even conscious.
Yeah.
And so going into the body, taking those breaths and connecting, even if just for a moment at first, with what's there. And then coming out of it. And then going back in, staying there for even just a few seconds longer, and being with what's there. And then coming back out. So the more you're able to do that, it's called pendulation. The more you're able to go in and come out and go in and come out, the more comfort you develop with yourself and with your feelings. And I really believe that's the seed of intuition too. Once you're able to stay with the feelings and be there with sensation, there's so much information in the sensation in the body.
Wow, so there's so much to be gained from this process. And I have so many questions to ask you about this. I guess my first one would be sort of like, what's a very practical layout of what a person might go through when they come in for this mindfulness-based counseling session, where they're able to do this process of going in and out of their interior space?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. And that's been a piece for me of uncovering this art, because it very much is an art too. As a therapist, you have to be really aware of the level of trauma someone might have.
Sure.
And you have to really create a safe container for people to explore that. So that's the first part, I would say, is people coming in, creating that safe space and creating that container. Because the stronger the container is, the more you feel able to explore whatever's there, right? Because you feel like it can be held. So a lot of times I'll do a visualization with people where we do create this container. So I'll have them close their eyes, place both feet flat on the ground, get a sense of their physical body and then their energy body, and imagine that there's this container.
Wow.
So there's that sense of actual physical containment. A lot of people say they imagine it as like a cocoon or an egg or something like that, a bubble of light, whatever it is. But that creates that sense of safety. And then I'll get people feeling good. So we'll do like a safe place or a place in nature meditation. I use a lot of guided meditation in my practice. So we'll do that. And that gets people feeling good. They're vibrating at a higher level, and they're ready to do the work, and they're resourced. So I'll say this place can be a resource for you as we continue on in this work. So you have your container, you have your resource, and then we go in. So just inviting people. We do a body scan usually to start, so just noticing what's there. Starting at either the top of the head or the tip of the toes and working the other way. And just saying, notice that's there. There's nothing to do, nothing to change, just notice. And if your mind starts to go into story about what's there, say, thanks, mind, and let it go.
Perfect. Cool.
So that's usually where we start. And then once we tune into a specific area of the body that might have some pain or a lot of tension or tightness, anything like that, we'll go in just a little bit. And that's that pendulation piece.
Okay.
And so a lot of times, you know, it can be related to a specific memory if we get into it, like a long-standing memory, or thinking about a particular person might cause tightness in the stomach. Or so really reading those somatic cues and being able to be with it, experience a little bit of discomfort, and then know that you're resourced and you can come out. So then we'll go back to that resource, usually feel good again, wrap up the session.
Awesome, wow.
And then go back in.
Okay, cool. Yeah. That's so interesting. Last night I was teaching a meditation, and I had one of the people in the meditation class say, it's really hard for me because I have tinnitus in my ear, and I don't know, it's like she couldn't focus because of her tinnitus, and what I recommended was that she actually go a little bit deeper into that sensation, because I feel that when we're resisting anything in our body, our typical response is to automatically say no to it. Right. If it's pain or whatever it might be, it's like no, and then that sort of creates a block. So as she went deeper into this sensation of tinnitus, she actually was able to then soften that feeling and go deeper into meditation. So sounds similar to what you're guiding people through, is like it's okay to have a little bit of discomfort in your body, and it's actually important that we touch on it, acknowledge it, and we don't have to dive into it, which could feel really unsafe for a lot of people, but to touch it a little bit. And so what kind of movement do you feel that creates in their process of psychotherapy?
Another really good question. Yeah, so I think it opens up the energy, things that have been blocked. So a lot of times with trauma, I trained in rapid resolution therapy for trauma, and the whole idea behind that is that the whole issue isn't like the brain and that the brain doesn't work properly. It's the way that the brain is reading data about an event. So they describe it as like it's, all your neural pathways are like hallways. And each time a trauma or something like that happens, that data gets stuck in the hallway, and then it creates this data block that just collects more and more stuff.
Oh, wow.
So it's basically a blockage, right?
Yeah.
So I think how it moves people in the process of psychotherapy is clearing out some of those blocks, so that your brain is able, your mind, your whole body is able to read events and outer information as it's happening in the moment, rather than through this ball of gunk that's created from the past.
That's
so it's
brilliant.
Like cleaning out the filter, basically,
Totally.
So that you're reading things as they're actually happening, rather than responding to every event in the present moment through that.
Totally amazing, yeah. Because so much of our suffering is based on the past, and so when we're trying to fight that past, then we just remain in that suffering place and never really go beyond into a state of emotional freedom. Right. So you're really opening up an opportunity for people to experience emotional freedom. Yeah, that's so cool. And so what do you think might block a person? Do you find that some people will only go so far and then they get stuck? And if so, I'm sure a lot of people do kind of go so far and then get stuck. What do you think is at the root of that?
I think it's that resistance piece that you were talking about. And some people think resistance is like this dirty word. It has a negative connotation, right? But not always. It's actually a protective function of the ego and of our being, because for some people to go completely into their trauma all the way would be too much. Their system wouldn't be able to handle it. The nervous system, all of that. So it's a protective mechanism, really. So working with that, understanding that it's actually a healthy thing in theory. And then working with that, and so really allowing people to take their time.
That's great.
And
so
some people will. It's very gentle as best it can be, and some people may not ever go deeper. They might just decide that that's not for them, and that's not what they want to do, and that's okay. But I find that just creating that containment piece helps a lot, because people know that they only have to deal with so much at a time. Right. And that it can be held.
Totally. And they can touch on the fear a little bit, but they don't have to dive into the painful place.
It's like knowing you can put on the brakes. A little bit if you need to.
Yeah, that is so cool. And so what do you find, so it's so cool how you bring in the somatic piece, because it seems to me like if we can calm our nervous, it's just simply calming our nervous system, allows stillness to where almost like people then start to maybe willingly open up a little bit more and And do you find that that's occurring in your practice?
Yeah, I would say so, and mostly through the yoga work that I incorporate too,
yeah,
which is great because it's all about, I talk about the as-is principle, which I learned from Dawn and Amba Stapleton, my teachers, in my yoga teacher training, and it's the awareness of sensation through internal scanning is what as-is stands for. And so it's the idea that the more you open up to all of your experiences, the more you become alive, basically.
Oh, cool.
Because you notice all of the sensation, everything that's always present. Like, there's so much happening in our bodies all of the time, right?
All the time.
All the time. And so as an acupuncturist, obviously you're very aware of energy flow and all that. So the more you open up to it, the more overall health and well-being I think it creates, because you're allowing that prana to flow more freely through the body rather than having all these constricted places. And so with yoga, it's like becoming aware of those habitual holding patterns. Maybe it's a shoulder that's constantly up, or you know, something like that.
Clenching your jaw.
Clenching your jaw, something that's just become a habitual structural pattern.
Right.
And so really going in and mindfully and consciously restructuring structure.
Yeah.
To allow more freedom.
Sure, to allow more freedom, and then you make the connection so wonderfully between that pattern, that structurally imbalanced pattern in the body, and the state of your mental and emotional being.
Yeah.
And so you find that the more you guide people in opening up their body, the more they're freeing up mentally and emotionally.
Yeah. There's a saying, flexible spine, flexible mind.
I love it.
And I think it's so true.
Yeah.
So, you know, it teaches you to be able to be non-judgmental toward your own experience and really be open to what's there and feel more alive, feel more vibrant.
Now, how does it teach you to be non-judgmental? I can imagine some people come to you and they've never tried yoga before in their life, and they are like, well, I can't even get into this position or that position, and then they might start judging themselves. And how do you guide them through that process?
That's, I think, the witness consciousness piece, and developing that witness consciousness, where you're able to notice your experience and take a step back from your experience and observe it from a non-judgmental point of view.
Yeah.
So really allowing and encouraging and inviting people to notice the thoughts that they're having about themselves. And pretty soon, I think when you're really in touch with your body, it's actually hard to have those thoughts about yourself when you're in your body.
So true.
Because that body perspective is different than the mind perspective a lot of times.
Yeah, it is.
So if you're connecting with your body, it's like, wow, that's pretty harsh. You realize how violent that is toward yourself.
Right.
And how so often we are in that mind state of our inner critic just going and going and going, right? So developing that non-judgmental piece, I always tell people it's not about doing it right. It's all an inquiry, right? Cool. So it's all just getting really curious about your experience in the moment, knowing there's no right or wrong. And I think it also facilitates a feeling of empowerment because you give people lots of choices. So you're always inviting them to move based on what their body cue is telling them, or giving them permission to do whatever they need to do. And so creating that sense of I can make choices, I can notice what's going on in my body, and then take effective action.
Right.
So that's
and I can be the choice maker.
Yeah. So there's so many things. Non-judgmental awareness is just one of them, but
yeah, that's really incredible. So do you give your patients or clients, do you give them a yoga postures that they should be doing at home, or do they come to a yoga class that you teach? How does that work?
Mostly it's things that we do in session that we'll hold a pose for a little bit longer, and it's a combination of like being in the pose, usually more of a restorative or yin pose, and it's supportive. I have blocks and props and other things.
That's amazing. So you actually have them doing the yoga pose in the counseling session. I love it.
Yeah.
That's
and
so
then
cool.
it's bringing in that hypnosis piece while they're in like child's pose, let's say. And so helping them to get really deep and relax into that pose, notice what's coming up in their experience and in their mind, and then working on the subconscious level with that and rewiring the brain. So that's a piece of the somatic work too, is it actually rewires the brain at another level than just purely mental work.
Yeah, that seems like such a great combination, just a really perfect combination to calm the nervous system and give yourself more space to rewire.
It's that internal spaciousness.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I love it. Yeah. So are there certain things that you tend to see in your practice? Are there certain reasons why people come to you, or is it all across the board?
I find that I get a lot of people who are suffering from anxiety. And so I do a lot of work with anxiety. I also work with some eating disorders or just body image issues, which is really common. And, people obsessing over exercise or food, anything like that. Even if it's coming from a healthy place where they want to be really healthy, sometimes it can get out of balance too. So that's been interesting. Work with depression, a lot of grief, I would say. People coming in with grief, and so that's also a great avenue for the yoga and hypnotherapy work, just really being in the body, even when it's a really painful place to be. Yeah. And learning to befriend the body and befriend yourself, ultimately.
And actually be with it. From a Chinese medicine standpoint, we're always talking about how the emotions are not bad, they're not wrong, and we want to be with them, but we also want to move through them. Right. And so it's like you're offering a safe place for people to be with their emotions while they're there, and then to, in a healthy way, move through them in a healthy time frame. Right. So that 10 years down the road, they're not still stuck in that pattern. Oh, great! You're so helpful for so many people.
I just love it. I love the work, and I love that mindfulness piece and the somatic work, and it's fun. Yeah. Because you never know what's going to be there, and it's so different for each person, and especially exploring the subconscious realm too. There's so many layers of consciousness, and a lot we have to learn about that. So what's cool is that all the latest neuroscience is actually confirming what yogis and people have been saying for a long time about the way the energy systems work and how you can rewire the brain and rewire those patterns. Right. So that's what's exciting to me, is this convergence of the science and the spiritual.
It's so cool. Yeah. It's like people like you and me, we're like, well, yeah, we knew that, but right. But it's really neat to see it all coming together and merging into a place where it's more accessible to more people. Yeah. And
I find that I have a lot of clients who are very analytical, so to provide them that psychoeducational piece of the science, they're like, oh, okay, all right, I can get on board with this now, whereas before they're like, I don't know.
Yeah. Exactly, that's that accessible piece that I love. It's this is available to everybody.
Right. That's the best thing about working with the breath, which is a lot of what I teach people. I give a lot of concrete tools because I think that's so important when you're working through your own process. And so the breath is obviously a great tool. I'm sure you teach that in your meditation classes.
I do, yeah.
That's accessible to you anytime, and
always breathing.
Always breathe.
So every moment you can access your breath. Exactly. And you can find freedom and space and stillness in that. Yeah. Wow, I just love what you're doing and what you're pulling together and creating in your practice. I think it's so beneficial for so many people. Is there anything else about it that you wanted to share?
I think we covered a lot of it. Yeah.
Cool. Well, we'll share in the next episode. Yeah. Or we'll go deeper into it.
Great.
Yay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You're awesome. And the website will be on the down below.
Yeah, we'll put the website there.
Okay, right. Thanks for joining us.